I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. So I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Louis, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Jackman, Johnson, Eastwood, Backman, Waite, Walt, Hanzus, Nastrake, Jansen, Boys Young, Jammer King, Salvador, Correa, Brewerlow, Pollock, Finley, Turek, Sanya, Buganecki, Jay McKee, McDonald, Mellon, Vichayana, Kavanaugh, Mason, Manny, Stillman, Stepniak, McClement. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Louis, man. Got a cup in year 52, man. So give me a Let's Go Blues.
And now, the starting lineup for your Bluenotes podcast. Tom Franklin and the man called Wags.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun, and hello and welcome to Bluenotes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we're talking about St. Louis. This is your home for St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Tom Franklin, and I'm joined, as always, by my comrade, the man called Wags. And Wags, how you doing? I mean, this is a welfare check. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay now. It's been a rough 48, 72 hours since Friday night. I'm making it. How about you, good sir?
Well, my liver is currently day-to-day right now. That's because I've been having to cope with what happened Friday nights. And yeah, let's not talk too much about it because it's one game out of 56, right? And we're going to forget about it in no time. It's going to be fine, guys. It is going to be just perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And by the way, we are available all over social media. Wags, why don't you tell us where they can find us?
Yeah, make sure you guys follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Bluenotes Pod. You can also find us on Instagram and on YouTube. Make sure you hit the bell on YouTube to subscribe so you can find out whenever we're on, because we're going to have a lot of great content coming at you now that hockey season is in full swing. And make sure you give us a rating on iTunes or any of the other podcast networks that you find us on, because without that, it's going to be hard for us to get this out to other Blues fans, and we want them to hear this as well. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, rate on all those networks, because it is awesome. Hit that bell, please. I want to hear the ding.
Yes, hear it. Yeah, exactly. Ring that bell so you know that when we are on YouTube every single time. For instance, if you're watching us live at 8:30 Sunday night, I said 8:30 because we are starting a little bit later today, just for some logistical reasons. But if you ring the bell on YouTube, you will know we are streaming at 8:30 and not 6:30 this week. So welcome, whether you're listening to us live or listening to us on the podcast, available on Monday, wherever you get your podcast from. So we first have some news to drop along here. If you're watching us, you're noticing on top of the screen here that we have DraftKings on top of our screen, and that is because we want to introduce them as our new partner for Bluenotes and the Hockey Podcast Network. We'll tell you a little later on how you can get a free shot at millions of dollars of prizes with UFC 257 coming up this weekend, all through DraftKings. So we are happy to start our relationship with them. Coming up this episode, a look ahead to the Blues Sharks 2-game home set this week. We're going to have Nick Floor of the Stick Hungry podcast on with us. The Blues, this will be the home opener for the Blues Monday night. They host the Sharks at 7 o'clock local time, and then they'll play at 8 o'clock Wednesday night at Enterprise Center. So be interesting to see how Enterprise Center sounds this year, because they are going to have some fans, Wags, but it's going to be like, I think, 300 max.
Yeah, 300, but it's going to be frontline workers, healthcare workers, all that stuff. So a really good group of people coming in.
Yeah.
They've done their work and their diligence to make sure that this is set up to be safe, but also enjoyable for these people that have put in some long, hard hours during this pandemic. So it's going to be great to see fans in the stands. It's going to be real interesting to see how it sounds and how things look.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really glad that those frontline workers are getting a chance at Hockey First. And it's going to be like their own personal show of hockey, you know, and hopefully it's some good hockey against the San Jose Sharks team that isn't expected to do a whole lot this year. So we'll see if the Blues can pull out some wins there. Before that, it's our Aloha Commentary with Guy, the Y Blues fan of STLFanReport.com. This week, he brings along his friend, the Disgruntled Blues Fan, representing all of those rational online St. Louis Blues, you know, posters from like the STL Today boards and those guys. So it's going to be great. He's coming along here in just a little bit. But first, you know, after Friday, we all need to put a smile on our face. And well, who better to do that than the man that brings us our intro music every single week, Teriyaki Fingers, Luke Widbin. And in case you're still wondering just what the hell happened Friday night in Colorado, we're still trying to figure that out. I don't know what sobriety is after Friday, but let's try to have a fun spin on the calamitous events of Friday night. MC Widbin is here with his latest lyrical masterpiece, and today he drops a fat beat on the fat beating the Blues took Friday night and their much better first game as well. So without further ado, Luke, take it away.
Welcome back to the ice. The Blues are 1-1, but I bet you think that worse after the last one was done. Now you can jump if you wanna, but not so fast. Let's do the last one first and the first one last. Holy, what a game. How do you even explain the ineptitude, except if you remembered my claim that Colorado is the best team in the NHL? Then maybe you could score 8 goals if we don't play well. Number one, the altitude is no one's friend unless you train in it all season. Guess it's possible then. Number 2, playing the game with only 5 defense. Can someone please explain how Blade was bad but not that offense? Number 3, even though I felt Bortat had a rough game 1, he's a strong defensive mind who covers lots for Vince Dunn. Speaking of defense, number 4, how do you suggest we win a game when any team gets 7 chances to impress with the man advantage, especially when the man is Nate McKinnon? An advantage when it's even, so there's no chance you'll be winning. Billy Husso was so-so, but it's hard to blame him. What a shame when you come in the game and the rest of the team are no-shows. We couldn't make a pass, couldn't get a shot. Pink thought the ice would stick, he's somehow only in our spots. No excuses, the Blues just suck, but when you lose by 1 or 8, it's still just one loss. Remember Wednesday? Let's think about that. Things are pretty different when the team ain't flat. They got down early, but I think there's a theme. If you stay out of the box, you keep your record clean. Suffocate the breakout, force a bad pass, head back the other way, place in the back of the net. Hoffman couldn't play, so who can we turn to? Well, everything's sunny when Oscar plays line 2. Kyrou, tic-tac-toe, we even got a goal from the big red dog. Binnington was great, he made the big saves. We kept the shots outside and none in the lane. Their stars had no power and we won by 3. That's the game we play if we play as a team. So chin up, Blues fans, there's more hockey ahead. We got 2 against the Sharks and that's 1 fish that's dead.
You know, we've had many different forms of Luke Widbin in our time with him. We've had the country music star Luke Widbin. We've had interpretive dancer Luke Widbin. We have had Candle in the Rear Luke Widbin. That right there, I don't know what I love more about that rap than some of the lines that he dropped, like Husso was so-so, and it's always sunny when Sunny plays on line 2. Or the fact that I just realized when I played that right now, the beat is let's go. The Blues go marching in. Luke, if you're listening and watching, and I know you are, don't change that beat for the rest of the season. This is going to be a Sunday feature on this podcast this season. He's gonna drop a new one every single week. That's perfect, Luke. Don't change it.
Yeah, I didn't realize it the first time I heard it. I didn't hear that either. And then just now I was like, wait a second. I know. Holy cow, that works so perfectly. You have to keep it.
And were you like me? And as he was rapping along, imagining him in front of a crowd like an 8 Mile, just dropping a beat like that, with B Rabbit, Eminem next to him.
Oh yeah, totally. Him and actually Bugs Bunny too, because they have that kind of thing going on as well. Bugs Bunny and Eminem on either side of him. That's the picture. I could just see him rocking back and forth doing it.
Well, we are definitely going to share that. It's on YouTube. He has it unlisted at the time of this recording, but he'll make it public. We will share that. Please follow him on YouTube. The guy is a lyrical genius, and we are so damn lucky to have him here. He is awesome. So thank you very much, MC Widbin, for that one. Well, for a more fleshed out description of what happened Friday, first of all, I don't think we can match Luke in terms of, in his description of it, especially not within 2 minutes. But we did speak to Tell It As It Is podcast host Griffin Youngs about the Blues Avs series. And Wags, this will be our only statement on the record about the second game, because quite frankly, I don't feel like talking about it again.
No, time to put it out of our misery. One conversation, statement, done, move on to the next.
And here is that statement. We're going to, before we take it out back and, behind the woodshed and put a bullet in it, said, here it is, our appearance on the Tell It As It Is podcast.
We've been dancing around it a little bit for a few minutes now.
Oh, God.
So,
no.
I think,
let's do it. Let's do it.
I think it's time we got into it. The Avs 8-0 victory over the St. Louis Blues in Game 2, all but wiping away any concerns that Avs.
Where's my bottle of Jack Daniels? Hey, you got my bottle of Jack Daniels in there? I need it now. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just about wiping away any concerns that the Avs had after that rough first game. So I wanted to ask you
What
guys.
do you mean I'm developing a problem? You're not going to give it to me? What? All right. We'll talk later. All right, go ahead.
So I got to ask you guys, what the hell happened after that first period? I know the Avs took control in that first period and Binnington played very well in the first 20 minutes, but what the hell happened after that? Do you think it was the Avs were that good, or were the Blues playing that bad?
Both. It really came down. I mean, it was penalties. That was a big piece. You're wearing down some of your best players because they're out on the ice for so many penalty kill opportunities. Just a complete breakdown of, play. The amount of times that there was an Avalanche player and a good Avalanche player wide open in the slot or at the side of the net or just about anywhere on the ice. It was just a complete breakdown by the Blues defensively. And it was because the guys that you have out there are just so damn good. You can't give them any room or any space or any time. Landeskog's first goal, he was shocked that he had as much time as he actually did. And I think it was really just a combination of all of that. Stars were aligning for the Avalanche when it came to having their guys at the right place at the right time. And it was a complete breakdown by the Blues of just not playing their game. And maybe the atmosphere caught up to them. Their legs were shot. You can put all the excuses out there, but Ryan O'Reilly said it plain and simple after the game. They were just embarrassed. The team was embarrassed. They didn't play the way that they're normally used to playing. And that's what happened. And the Avalanche capitalized, and you just got to chalk it up as, hey, you guys put on a clinic, and now we're both 1-1.
Yeah, and I think the way this season is structured, where you have all these back-to-back games, it is going to give teams who maybe get busted in the chops in the first game a chance to, re-strategize and reconfigure how they come out for the second game. Because now you've gotten a look at the other team, you know what to expect, and you can go ahead and act accordingly. And I think that's really a lot of what the Avs did on Friday night. Was they obviously figured out, what was working for the Blues. Maybe the Blues were a little overconfident coming into that first game. Like I said, feeling like King Kong, after that first game, they kind of, may have come back to bite them a little bit, because the Blues didn't really change, really much except adding Mike Hoffman to that lineup. And he obviously needs more time with Robert Thomas to, fully gel, because we didn't get he was kind of invisible out there Friday night, like a lot of Blues, honestly. And then the other issue I really felt that dogged the Blues, and Wax kind of touched up on it, is, one of the side effects of having a physical team is that you do draw penalties, from time to time, some nights more than others. And the Blues had their fair share of penalties on Friday night. And as we learned Friday night, don't give the Avs too many power plays, because of those 8 goals, 5 were on the power play. That is redonkulous. So yeah, it's I'm not saying that the Blues need to like really ease up, but they got to play smarter against a team like Colorado, because if the Blues go into the penalty box too much, they will get burned. It's quite obvious, and it's not that their PK is necessarily bad. I just think it is, as you kind of pointed out, the Avs have an incredible top 6. They have a wealth of talent, and this is a team that you do not hand the keys to a power play to. You just don't do that.
Absolutely. The Avs had 7 power plays in that game and scored on 5 of them, which, from what I remember, ties a franchise record. And can
it's got to be an NHL record almost. I mean, 5
I
out
would
of
think
7,
so.
that's an epic night.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys remember the last time there was an 8-goal deficit for a win? The one I can think of off the top of my head is when the Habs crushed the Red Wings a few years ago, 10-1. But
well, I know this was the 3rd worst loss for the Blues in regulation. The second, there was another loss in 1996 against the Canucks that was just as bad, if not worse. And then I think there was like one back in the early 70s. That kind of gives you context of how prolific the Blues loss was there. They don't usually lose like this. This is completely out of left field.
This was, I believe, the biggest margin of an Avalanche win since 1995, when the Avalanche, just after they moved, knocked off the Sharks 12-2. And the first time they'd won by more than 8 in a shutout since they were the Nordiques, I believe, in the 80s. They beat the North Stars 8-0 that night. So it's been a while. And I don't think we're going to see a score like that on either side again this season. I think it was a perfect storm of maybe the Blues coming in a little overconfident, the Avs responding well to being punched in the mouth, and just everything working for them. It seemed like every shot they were taking ended up going in the net. Now I have to ask you guys, are you concerned about Jordan Binnington and Ville Husso as your goaltending tandem? Because that got rough after the first period.
I'm not concerned about Binnington. This was not a Binnington game, that you can point the finger at him and say, well, he sucked. No, it was the team that sucked around him. Binnington, did everything he could to keep the Blues in this game in the first period. And I felt going into that intermission, it's like, okay, this team better have a response in the second period, because this is a house of cards that are just waiting to fall over. And unfortunately, Binnington is not Patrick Waugh. He is not Dominik Hasek. He is not Ken Dryden. He is Jordan Binnington, who is a good but not elite goaltender that can steal a game like this. Not that even Waugh or Dryden would have had much luck, I feel, against the Avs Friday night. They just executed in every which way possible, and the Blues gave them every chance to execute they could by taking stupid penalties. Husso, I will admit something here. I watched the first goal that Husso allowed, where he Darren Pang made a comment just like a second or two before, where he said, "Oh well, Ville Husso is a very patient goaltender." So what happens is Ville Husso gets caught on the far side post, and he leaves a wide open net for Nazem Kadri. And right, he looked very patient. He looked very patient, getting back into the crease and trying to stop that goal. Not. And that's about all I could stand. And I didn't watch WandaVision, but I think I went to bed right after that, just because it was just going to be shaping up to one of those nights. So I'm a little, as Luke Widbin said in his rap this week, Husso was so, at best, and I think he was being kind. I'm not going to write him off after one game, because I think Friday, as you said, was kind of a perfect storm of events that happened. And that's not the greatest situation to give a young netminder his first NHL exposure against, but if he like chokes against, like, say, the Kings or the Sharks or someone that's a bottom feeder, then I'll be concerned. But it's too early for that. It's game 2 out of 56. So I think Binnington will be okay. Jury's still out on Husso. That's where I stand.
But we were worried about Binnington after last year's games in Colorado, when he basically got pulled in both of them because he gave up a ton of goals. And then Wednesday night came around and he put up a great game in Colorado. So I think that allayed some people's fears on what Binnington was going to be able to do, especially against Colorado. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't even Husso's fault, in a sense, against Colorado on Friday night. It's just poor team play. And it's Husso's first experience in the NHL. The guy was probably nervous beyond belief. He is now the primary backup to a guy that doesn't necessarily fully control the number one spot. We were worried going into the season about this tandem because we weren't sure what to expect. Binnington, yes, has won the Stanley Cup, but looking back at it now, you could sit there and say, hey, he profiles maybe closer to a guy like J.S. Jaguar, where he went on a magical run with Anaheim and got them there, and then was a good goalie after that, but never really anything spectacular. And that could be what's going on. And when they traded Jake Allen to Montreal, we all thought that was a precursor to Alex Pietrangelo being re-signed. Well, if they never had any intention of re-signing Pietrangelo, why would you get rid of one of the best backups in the league and bring up a guy like Husso to be the backup? So we were a little worried going into this season what that was going to look like. And to have that be the first taste you get of the Binnington-Husso combo isn't good. But just like Tom, I'm not going to write him off just yet. Let him get into a start against San Jose or LA, see what he can do in that role. And then maybe we can make another judgment in a couple of weeks to see what we've got in Ville Husso.
I definitely think Armstrong moved Jake Allen because he was worried about the cap situation this offseason. And even still, even though, Petro isn't back, and even with Krug in, and Hoffman in, you're still in the situation where you almost had the LTIR Tarasenko as well to, get yourself under the cap. Thankfully, they didn't have to do that. They just had LTIR Steen. But if Steen was still playing this year, then you're really screwed financially. You don't get Mike Hoffman, and you almost have to move Jake Allen at that point in his salary. And that's so you're going from a $4.35 million backup to a $700,000 backup or whatever Husso makes. So that's really the entire thing there was financial, with the side of, Husso's been a guy that's been in the organization for a long time. He's been always kind of at the precipice of the NHL. It feels like a couple of years ago, it felt like he was going to be the next one, when Jake Allen was having his yips and his moments of doubt and shame. And then the only reason Binnington got called up in the Cup year was because Husso was hurt. So that's kind of always going to be one of those what could have been type of a story there. But you had, Husso getting hurt. And then last season, Husso was just kind of okay in the AHL. And I think the Blues were in a point of like, okay, we need kind of like the same point with Kyrou, really, although probably even more so. They need to see what they have in Ville Husso. They need to see if he's going to cut in the NHL. And if not, cut bait and move on. And that's sadly, it's not the greatest situation for Husso to be in right now, but it is what it is. And thanks again, Griffin, for that conversation. You can check out more of our interview with him at the Tell It Avs It Is podcast, available wherever you get your podcast from. We talked a lot more with him as well. It was a really good hour-long chat just about we talked a little bit about the Sammy Blais suspension as well. He's out for 2 games. Of course, Nichushkin gets nothing for Bertuzzo because reasons. And it was just a really well fleshed out conversation, not just about the Blues and Avs, but about hockey as well. So I know I'm saying this because you may be reluctant to hear the Colorado Avalanche side of things after what happened Friday, but I insist you go check out that podcast. Griffin is a very reasonable, intelligent fan. He's not going to rub it in our faces. He didn't when we talked to him, and we had a good talk just about other things besides the Blues and Avs. So it's a really good conversation you should check out.
Yeah, and I posted last week when we did our show with him, when we put it out there, it's hard to hate a team when the people that are associated with it are really good people. Griffin is one of those people. We're going to talk with Nick Floor here in a little bit, and he's another one of those that you're like, I don't like the team, but the people that cover it, the people that are around it and associated with it, when they're good people, it's hard to really have that hatred in your body. And yeah, the conversation was just absolutely phenomenal. We went longer than we expected, and it just felt so natural.
And before we also have the Aloha Commentary coming up as well. That'll be coming up right after we tell you about our new partner, DraftKings. The return we all have been waiting for is finally here. One of the sport's most notorious icons is stepping into the octagon this Saturday. DraftKings, the official daily fantasy partner of the UFC, is giving you a free shot at huge cash prizes. For this weekend's fight, DraftKings is offering new players a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with first deposit.
And if you haven't tried it yet, Fantasy MMA is easy to play. Just pick 6 fighters, stay under the salary cap, and pile up points for advances, takedowns, and more. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to compete for a shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. Plus, don't forget about football playoffs, where DraftKings has even more money up for grabs this weekend. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience.
And download the DraftKings app now and use promo code THPN to get a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes throughout the weekend. That's promo code THPN to get a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes only at DraftKings. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. All right. And Nick Fleur, the Sick Hungry Podcast, joins us for our Bluenotes face-off of the week. That's still to come. But first, without further ado, here is this week's Aloha Commentary featuring the Disgruntled Blues Fan.
And now, from Honolulu, Hawaii, via St. Louis, starting in the Pacific Ocean, Guy, the Hawaii Blues Fan.
Aloha, Blue Notes Podcast. I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues Fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report, and author and creator of the St. Louis FanReport.com, and this is my Aloha. Okay, stop. That's enough of his trippy bullshit. There's no way I'm gonna let him blow sunshine up your asses. Who am I? I'm disgruntled, pissed off Blues fan. And I gotta tell you, that was an absolute nightmare to watch, that debacle. I don't get it, how do you come out on Wednesday and play the perfect game and show everybody who you are, and 2 days later, come out and lay an egg like that? Oh my God. And then, here's the worst part of it. The worst part of it is the referees. Okay, I know you should never blame a game on the referees, but how do you whistle Sammy Blais in the first game for brushing up against a guy's face, and then when a guy hits Bortuzzo in the numbers and slams his head into the glass, you say that's a legal hit? You suspend Blais, but you don't do anything here. NHL Player Safety Committee? Yeah. Right there, baby. Right there. You can smack it. I don't get it. I never will. The commission, I'll tell you what. You want to fix this Player Safety Commission and you really want to make it worth something? Third party. Get it away from the league. Have a third party who come in, look at the rules, and then, based on that, move forward. Let's get the league away from it. You do that, and then I'll start accepting what they put out. Till then, they can... Right there, baby. And you know what? The Blues are at home. They are playing the next 4 games against the Kings and the Ducks. If they don't get a minimum of 6 points out of this, we're in trouble already. And yes, I'm saying that because right after the Ducks, after next week's Aloha Commentary, they're playing the Knights. A perennial everybody thinks will be second. Come out, kick the crap out of the Ducks, kick the crap out of the Sharks. I said Kings, I meant Sharks. I'm sorry. See, I'm so upset. I can't even get the teams right. Now, you know what? This is a disgruntled, pissed off Blues fan, and I'm throwing it back to you guys and that idiot so he can blow sunshine up your ass. I'm done. Out of here. Well, Tom and Wag, it's back to you. Keep those chins up. You know, our boys are playing their home opener on Monday, and they're going to go. Let's go Blues. Let's go Blues. Let's go Blues. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying aloha, mahalo. Please like us and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you again on Aloha Commentary on the Blue Note Fan Report. And please like my articles on STLFanReport.com. Aloha!
What is up, everybody? Mikey CLT here from Bar Down Breakdown, letting you know that our 100th episode is going to be dropping exclusively on the Hockey Podcast Network on January 27th. We will be joined by special guest Derek from the amazing pop punk band State Champs. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our socials so you do not miss any of our amazing episodes. We are so pumped that we have made it to episode 100. And to thank you, we are running an Instagram contest where one lucky winner can win a Steez brand snapback hat. So head over to our Instagram and enter our contest. Also, if you are just hearing about Bar Down Breakdown, make sure you go and check out our 99 other episodes where we have had artists who have been nominated for Grammys, all the way down to artists who are unsigned, where we dive into the crossover between alternative music and hockey. So make sure you go and check out Bar Down Breakdown wherever you listen to podcasts, brought to you exclusively by the Hockey Podcast Network.
It's the Bluenotes Face-Off of the Week.
And that beautiful NHL 94 music means it is time once again for our Bluenotes Face-Off of the Week. And the Blues have the San Jose Sharks coming up this week. A couple of games to start off the week. Hopefully they're palate cleansers after what happened in Colorado. We will not speak any more of that. Let's go ahead and welcome our guest from the Stick Hungry podcast. He is Nick Floor. Nick, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, guys. How you guys doing?
Well, you know, we've been better. I think we're getting better, Wags. I think we're starting to put this behind us a little bit. Just, you know, one alcoholic beverage at a time. I think we're gonna be okay, Wags. I think we're gonna be okay.
The hazy cloud is starting to diminish a little bit. I'm coming out of the drunkenness phase of Friday nights, and I think we're ready to go for the games against the Sharks.
Well, speak for yourself. I'm still drunk. I forgot what sobriety feels like. So, on that note, the Sharks. Let's go ahead and talk about San Jose. Kind of get to know the Sharks a little bit for those that here in St. Louis that don't get to stay up late and watch Sharks games very often. The Sharks come into this season after kind of a disastrous 2019-20 campaign. Not many people expecting much out of San Jose this year. Are even San Jose fans expecting much out of San Jose this season?
You get a bit of a mixed crowd. Essentially, what happens is you have the truthers who are like, okay, this team isn't as good as they were the last 4 years. We understand where we're at. There's no way we can be as bad as we were last year, right? Right, guys? And then you have the delusional fans or the hardcore fanatics that are like, this is just a hiccup. We're going to bounce back. We're going to go to the playoffs and we're going to win the Stanley Cup. So as per usual, it's a mixed crowd. But I would have to side with the truthers on this one. I don't think there's any way the Sharks do another bottom three finish this year, but I do expect them to be a fringe playoff team just slipping out of the playoffs.
Ooh, and yeah, we did not have that same sentiment, unfortunately. we got them in the bottom two of our rankings, but you guys still have a lot of really good players on the team. So, you know, we can't really fault you for thinking that way.
Yeah, it's being able to dive deep into the team personally and see what has happened behind the scenes as opposed to what is shown in the media. I'm able to kind of make a little bit more of an analytical or hypothetical guess as to what the Sharks are going to be this season. And yes, it's only been a couple of games in, but there are some good signs and there are some bad signs, which has kind of led me to believe that the Sharks are going to be that middle of the pack kind of team, that league average team this year.
I will say it's a lot more likely that the Sharks and not the Kings are that middle of the pack team with, you know, Anaheim and Minnesota and Arizona, because you still have some talent on your team. It's just there's a lot of non-talent as well, unfortunately.
We've become very top heavy. If you take a look at the cap distribution percentage as well as what the line combinations have become, we got a very good line on the Hurdle line. We have a semi-decent, can be good, can be bad Couture line, and then the rest is a let's see what we can throw on the wall and see what sticks. So
Yeah, Blues went through that in the mid 2000s, but that was kind of all 4 lines. The Sharks did face our future Central Division foes and current thorns in our side, Arizona. You split the series with a 4-3 shootout win and a 5-3 loss. Were you guys encouraged at all by their performance?
Arizona came out with a bit of a jump that we didn't have. And I kind of attribute that to the long off season. We expected it going into the game, going into the different matchups. I want to say it's going to take about a dozen games before that we can actually see what the Sharks are going to be as a team. But there were a lot of good things on the Sharks end and a lot of good things that the Coyotes kind of threw at us. And they really tested us, and they played a lot better than we did in our victory. And we played better than they did in their victory, which is kind of weird, but that's hockey, right?
Well, I think it's fair to say, Wags, that the Blues played better than the Avs in the first game, and the Blues did not play better than the Avs in the second game. So we can't say the same ourselves. No.
Fair assessment.
And by the way, Nick, be afraid of the Avs. Be really, really afraid of the Avs because they're really good.
I picked them as the Cup winner this year and the overall consensus number 1 in the West. So I am very deathly afraid of the Colorado McKinnons.
Yeah, exactly. McKinnon, best player in hockey, by the way. But that's you know what? Actually, let's have that chat. I think McKinnon is, in terms of skill and overall talent, I think he's a great offensive talent. I think he's a very good defensive talent, which is something McDavid is not. I think McKinnon is the best player today. What do you think?
I agree entirely. I actually I think that Draisaitl's better than McDavid.
Ooh.
I'm ducking.
Ooh.
That's a personal opinion from the games that I've seen, being in the same division as them over the last 5-6 years. It's evident that Draisaitl has a better defensive game than Connor McDavid, and coming off of a Hart Trophy winning season, I feel like Draisaitl's really put himself at that sort of level of, okay, wait a minute, he's actually really freaking good. Maybe he's better.
With that silly contract that he signed.
How dare he? Tom Brady for the football fans out there. How dare he enable that?
Why can't he be more like Erik Karlsson and, to sign a big contract and then get played 30 games a year? Wags, what do you think? McKinnon best, or you still prefer McDavid?
I mean, after seeing McKinnon as much as I have, I cannot disagree with you. I mean, McDavid does make players around him better offensively for the most part. I mean, look at Pat Maroon. His highest goal total of the season was playing on the McDavid line. So you could probably attribute that to people, covering McDavid and Maroon being wide open in front of the net. And highlight reel goals. Nobody is better with the stick than McDavid. Probably. I mean, McKinnon's had some pretty sweet goals as well. But when you're talking about overall what this guy does for the team, you talk about his contract, you talk about his defensive prowess. I mean, he does everything to the best degree possible. And that's what you want in the best player, someone that can be an all-around good player. And that's what Nathan McKinnon, and he's humble about it too. I'm not sitting there saying McDavid's out there every night spewing his greatness, but there's something about him that makes you go, yeah. Whereas you look at McKinnon, you're like, yeah, he's on the opposing team, but I'd sit down and have a beer with him. He seems like a normal, everyday kind of guy. He just happens to be one of the best players on the planet.
By the way, if you happen to be from the greater Toronto area, we made no mention of Austin Matthews in this previous conversation. Continuing on.
You can't talk about porn on the internet, right?
No. I mean, even though THPN lets us swear, I think they pump the brakes at pornography, here in the network. So, all right, back on topic here. You kind of alluded to it, Nick. You had a even longer off season than the Blues did and many other teams because, of course, the Sharks didn't make the bubble. 10 months between hockey. How agonizing was that just as a fan? And did you have to pick up any new hobbies to fill the void?
Maybe if there wasn't a pandemic, I would have been able to pick up a hockey or a different hobby per se, other than watching hockey. My entire time has been occupied by my son, thankfully. So
there you go.
Any hobbies that are done, we do together. So he's a hell of an Uno player. I'll just let you know that now. He turns 3 in a couple days, and he kills it in Uno. I don't understand it. I'll never get it. So that was my hobby, board games.
Well, I can tell you for me, filling the void for me, I found a group that plays Dungeons and Dragons, and we that was how I kind of got through that no sports void there for a while. Which, we'll have I feel that's going to be a time period that gets glossed over time because for the longest time, no sports anywhere, and it was very tough. Of course, Wags, you didn't have to worry about filling the void because I saw your Star Wars collection earlier today, and you've had plenty of Star Wars to keep you company this year. So
Yeah, I've got like 150 of the books. I've got probably, I don't know, 20 of the Lego sets and the movies and the TV series. So yeah, Star Wars occupied my life pretty much during that pandemic, but also work. I mean, just because everybody else was in a pandemic, it didn't feel like I was. 45 hours plus a week at the job. I filled the void pretty well. And speaking of filling the void, the Sharks tried to fill that net void by picking up Devin Dubnyk from the Wild. However, Martin Jones got the first 2 starts. Does Dubnyk take over eventually? And do you guys have any faith in your netminders this year?
Faith is all you can have at this point in time. So there's that. I don't think the Devin Dubnyk acquisition was fill the void. I think it was a light a fire type of move. If you look at Martin Jones's past, whenever it's kind of two-sided in a sense. Whenever he has competition in net, i.e. Jonathan Quick on the Kings, he plays better. Even a little bit of James Reimer during the 2016 Cup run. So hopefully the Devin Dubnyk acquisition lights a bit of a fire under Jones's butt and gets him kind of back on his horse. Another thing is Martin Jones's best numbers came out of him not taking on 85% of the workload. So you bring in Devin Dubnyk, which a lot of other teams as well did in the NHL, where now we're running that goalie tandem situation. You bring in Devin Dubnyk to kind of run maybe a 60-40, 65-35 split with them to see how things go. And then you go, as time goes on throughout the season, you figure out who the true number 1 is. Now, Martin Jones had the quote unquote better camp. And by better camp, I mean, he didn't allow 7 goals in the final scrimmage. So he had the better camp. So he got the first start. The Sharks defense did what the Sharks defense always does, which is didn't play defense and hung him out to dry a little bit in the first couple of games. A couple of little floozy stops he could have made here and there. But I feel like the Martin Jones start in game 1 was evident of camp. The game 2 start was evident from his play in game 1. And then the benching was, you know what, we're down 2 goals. Let's maybe throw in Devin Dubnyk with 10 minutes left in the third, see how this goes. And, they didn't lay over. They didn't kind of give in, which was nice to see from a player or from a fan's perspective. So we'll see how the tandem kind of goes moving forward.
And we kind of had that in St. Louis here with Jake Allen. He was a guy that thrived when he had competition, but when it was his time, did not do so well. And I guess there have been some comparisons in the past of a Martin Jones and Jake Allen kind of being sort of the same kind of goaltender. I mean, I don't know if that's something you guys have ever heard, but just hearing you talk about it, that jumps right to my mind that he is Jake Allen-esque.
Yeah, it gives you something to relate to, essentially. Is something that you've experienced, the trauma of not having a true 1A goaltender or number 1 goaltender. So that has been the Sharks' MO for the last 15 years, ever since Nabokov's been out of net. So one of these days we'll find a true netminder.
One of these days, that's what we kept saying over the years, Wags, is one of these days we'll find our netminder. Turns out we had him all along. We just banished him in the minors, a guy named Jordan Binnington. Turns out when you actually give goaltenders a chance, they can surprise you sometimes. Although I don't know how many more chances Billy Husso will get after Friday night. Moving on, we said we're not going to talk about Friday night, so let's get back to happy stuff. Let's get back to positive talk here. So you have in your employ the grizzled veteran Patrick Marlowe. He's returning to the Sharks. He's one of the last 90s players in the entire league that actually played in the 90s. Always respect those guys. Just what does Patrick Marlowe mean to this organization, and where does he rank among the great Sharks of all time? Because you've had quite a few.
Yeah, Patrick Marlowe is called Mr. San Jose Shark for a reason. We drafted him first overall. You might have heard of the guy who was taken shortly after Joe Thornton. Now he plays for some wackadoo team up in Canada. But Patrick Marlowe is the original San Jose Shark. He has been like the lifeblood of this team. He's been the rock that held the team together. He's not so much the vocal guy in the locker room, and it shows, but he's always been there. It's like a couple of things you can count on: death taxes and Patrick Marlowe playing for the Sharks. So seeing him go for the all-time games played record is going to be it's going to be fun. It's going to be great to watch. Again, that just means that there's another young guy who won't get to play for the Sharks. But you know what? In a season like now, where it's viewed more of a transitional season for the Sharks, let's see what we got type of thing. You're not really kicking yourself in the butt, allowing him to break that record for us. So it's, as far as ranking as the Sharks of all time goes, each person is going to have their own point of view about that. Me coming later into the organization, I loved Joe Thornton. He was my first jersey. He had the personality that I wanted to see kind of take over the NHL. But I want to say, from a fan base perspective, Patrick Marlowe would probably rank number 1 in San Jose Sharks history.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Even though we're not the biggest fans of Joe Thornton here in St. Louis after he brained David Perron, but we're learning to forgive here in St. Louis, that's for sure. But he kind of talking about Marlowe and being kind of a Sharks legend. He's not part of the current issue, but you have a lot of players that have been longtime Sharks, like Marc-Edouard Vlasic, Brent Burns, Couture, Kane. And, with at least some of those contracts, you could take a look at them and say, well, they're unmovable contracts. They're overpaid contracts. Do you think the Sharks, in some instances, are too loyal to their players in that regard?
Ironically enough, this wasn't a problem until after the Cup run. Like, the Sharks had a very good recipe for success throughout the 2000s. They win the President's Cup, whatever the hell that's worth. They get bounced out in the first round by Detroit. So Doug Wilson has found a way to keep guys around on team-friendly contracts and not overcommit to handing out long-term deals until the 2016 Cup run. And he just, something happened. I don't know what it was. Too much at the bar or not enough at the bar. He just thought that he's just going to start handing out these LTDs. And now you look at it a couple years down the road, it's really starting to bite the guys in the butt. Not necessarily the AAV of the contract, but the clauses that are associated with it. You have full no movement clause on a guy like Marc-Edouard Vlasic for $7 million a year. That is really hurting you on the back end. And him and Justin Braun were was regarded as one of the best shutdown lines in the league. And through that 2016 Cup run, they shut down multitudes of first lines. It's just like it was elementary for them. But when you devote that much cap percentage, especially in a year like this year where the cap didn't adjust up, you essentially handcuff yourself moving forward a couple years into it. And if you look at the Kings, right, division rivalry, they have 2 cups to show for it. The Sharks don't. You don't have an issue. The Sharks don't. You don't have an issue handing out those long-term deals to the guys like Brent Burns and the guys like Evander Kane, Couture, when you have the hardware to show for it. Since the Sharks don't have the hardware to show for it, it leaves a bitter taste in everyone's mouth, and it gets painted and skewed in like a wrong complexion.
Yeah, Wags, I hope we can avoid that here in St. Louis, because we gave out a few big contracts after the Cup win as well.
We did, but we also didn't with Alex Pietrangelo. I mean, Doug Armstrong talked about that specifically, about not allowing one guy to kind of handcuff the organization to be above the coach and the owner. So it makes sense.
We didn't give that money to Pietrangelo, but we gave it to Justin Falk.
2 thumbs up.
No.
He played okay the first 2 games.
Yeah, we didn't have reason to throw tomatoes at him after the first 2 games, so that's a plus. That's a plus.
If that's your rating scale. Yeesh.
Only what is it, 7 years left on that? 7.
Hey,
7 long years.
Only 7 years if we can't, fleece Seattle next year.
Well, look, as I said, Seattle's got all the pieces in place to take Justin Falk out of our hands. Ron Francis was his GM in Carolina, and we Jedi mind tricked Jason Botterill into giving us Ryan O'Reilly. So the pieces are there. Believe this could happen, Wags.
I'm going to keep crossing my fingers. Well, let's talk a little bit about, you brought up Logan Couture, and you're talking about franchise players. He was a franchise pillar, especially last year. Do you guys attribute the factor to their poor performance last year to the loss of Logan Couture? And now, how's his health now? And do you think he'll bring better days back to the Sharks now that he's back in the lineup?
I think it was Couture, along with multitudes of injuries. You got the continuous grundle groin problem that Erik Karlsson has been having for 2 to 3 years now. You have Hurdle tearing his ACL, who, in my opinion, is technically more of a 1C than Couture is, as well as the Couture. I think it was a fractured wrist that he had. So when you take, I want to say that's close to 20 to 25% of your salary cap off of the books, and you look at the prospect pool that doesn't exist for the San Jose Sharks because they traded everybody away, specifically to Ottawa, you don't have guys that can come up into those roles and assimilate into those roles in the team. And the proof was in the pudding. You look at the record and it shows the Sharks were a bad team because they had a lot of injuries and a lot of down years. So not just the loss of Logan Couture on the year, but the likes of Hurdle and Karlsson as well attribute to that sort of down year that the Sharks had.
Can you see, though, the playing time that those guys that normally wouldn't have gotten that they got last year? Is that going to be something that will help the Sharks in the next couple of years? Guys that weren't going to get to play, got the experience, and maybe they don't play as bigger roles this year, but it does help them in the next couple of years, right?
Yeah, it's actually helping them within the first couple games. We got Noah Gregor centering the third line, and he was bounced up and down the lineup due to those injuries last year. So we get to see those younger guys get that exposure on the NHL level, which can be classified as a good thing, like you alluded to earlier with Binnington. What's crazy what happens when guys get ice time and the ability to show off, their skills, i.e. William Karlsson as well for the Vegas Golden Knights. So you see the loss of Joe Thornton at the end of this last season, and Noah Gregor's able to kind of just come up. Hey, I've played in the NHL now a couple of times. Yeah, I looked kind of bad because I was bounced around the lineup, but now I get a cemented role on this team. And you can see how what he has learned last year is being put to great use this year. So it is good in that sense that the Sharks were able to give those younger guys that exposure.
Well, one of your key players, I've got to talk about him, Evander Kane, and his $27 million debt. Bruh, what's going on with Evander Kane?
We kind of alluded to it a little bit on the last episode. I believe it was last Monday's episode, where we wanted to kind of reiterate to everybody that there's two things that everyone has that's personal to them. It's family and finances. So we're not going to know the entirety of the situation. People make bad investments all the time. And I think the biggest issue is the fact that Evander Kane isn't necessarily painted in all that great of a picture. Hasn't been his entire career, starting with the stacks of $100 bills type of picture that he had in Las Vegas.
I remember that.
Yeah, that wasn't all that great. And it's funny they reference back to that picture, but he was like 19, 20 years old. And if you showed me pictures of my 19-year-old self, I'd be like, oh my God, who is that guy? Get him the
Guilty.
fuck out of here. Holy crap.
Guilty.
So, I mean, some people view this bankruptcy, this Chapter 7, as a bit of an out, like an easy out for someone. And they try to use the pandemic as as an excuse to try to put more onus on him as the person. And in my personal opinion, seeing how people may or may not know how to work with finances, I can't tell you what his accountant told him to do. I can't tell you where he was told to invest his money here or there. But to try to attack the guy personally is a bit of a low blow, in my personal opinion. So, like, if you want to hate Evander Kane, the hockey player, that's fine. Because, yeah, he's a bit of a thorn in everyone's side. Look at what happened to OEL in the last game. He gets shouldered going into the boards. He follows through with the stick, hits the back of his head, or the side of his head. Then OEL's ear hits the corner of the half boards. And it just looks like a really, really bad hit. And that's just been Evander Kane's entire career, essentially, in the NHL. So if you want to hate Evander Kane, the hockey player, for what he does on the ice, the whole Reeves-Kane rivalry per se, that's fine. But for me, family and finances is something that you don't really get to necessarily chime in on personally.
Well, right, and in very rare instances, in case like this, do you even get the chance to chime in on that as a fan? And it's I think Kane, as you kind of pointed out, makes him a target for that kind of a thing, just because of that those fat stacks and his some maturity issues he's had over the years, and he's not one of my personal favorite players personally. But it's for me, it's not so much like an indictment on Kane as a human being, just as I look at it as, I go to work every week, 40 hours a week, punching the clock, and I'm lucky to bring home 5 figures every year. This guy blows through $27 million, in his career, and he's bankrupt over that. It just, to me, it's just like the numbers are just eye popping, and you just end up like, you're just wondering how.
Yeah,
how does this happen?
That's the big question. Like, who is telling him to invest this money in these places that aren't going to make him money? Usually you figure if your best friend is Joe Thornton, I'm sure Joe Thornton's got a pretty decent accountant, someone that's helping him keep money in certain places, so that way he can take care of his family in the long run. So
yeah,
the biggest question, and I don't think we're ever actually going to get an answer for it, like you said, is how. Like, how did this come to be? Why did he need such a large investment using his own contract as collateral from Centennial Bank? Like, why is this even a thing when you're making the sort of money that you're essentially making? And we're never going to know the full story until maybe we're able to do a Stick Hungry podcast interview with him in 10 to 15 years, fingers crossed, but that's the only question that that you and I can really ask in a situation like this. Like, how the hell does that happen?
Well,
Exactly.
we see it all the time with professional athletes, guys that make millions and millions of dollars and they retire from their career.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Remember Jack Johnson, his own family, bilked him out of his money.
Yeah. It's just, you got to sit there and go, okay, what are these agents, these teams, these organizations doing to these young kids that, we don't teach finances in high school anymore. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Is it's not necessarily what these players are doing. It's what society around it has led them to be a part of. And that's just something we all have to kind of maybe look in the mirror and go, okay, what do we do and what can we do to help these guys? And you're sitting there saying, how do we help multimillionaires? They're still human beings. And that's really what it comes down to. And if you can't find sympathy to help a human being, that might be something we need to look at as well.
Yeah, I draw major comparisons to like the Josh Gordon incidents in the NFL, where there's certain people that just want to take jabs at people from behind keyboards for some reason. Whereas the biggest problem that we should be alluding to, like you said, Wags, is what do we have to do as a society to help like prevent this from happening, like moving forward?
Well, right. And, for me, one of the answers is disincentivizing debt, to where, because debt itself is its own industry. The whole credit industry is just massive and gigantic. And until you disincentivize that, it's going to be hard to, fall in those pitfalls. I mean, I think all of us, at one point in our lives go into some debt at some level. So, it just, you really can't fault Kane so much, especially if he's getting bad advice. I mean, one thing Cujo, Curtis Joseph, talks about in his book was when he got his first big contract, how everyone and their mother is like coming up to him and saying, I have an investment idea, invest in my business, invest in my whatever. And he needed to, have a professional accountant hired. Like, I was like his first hire when he got into the pros, just to kind of govern his finances, to say, okay, this is what you should spend on. This is what you shouldn't. I don't know what advice Kane got. I don't know if he got any advice at all whatsoever. But, for me, that seems like you almost kind of need people like Kane to fail in order to convince people, okay, maybe I should be smart when I sign my first pro contract. Otherwise, I don't want to be another Evander Kane or a Jack Johnson.
Yeah, that's 100% agree with that.
All right, let's go back to let's get to go back to the actual game on ice here. We talked to the guys at the Weekly Nightly podcast last week, and first of all, the whole Vegas Golden Knights Twitter sphere is an absolute machine, and the Weekly Nightly guys are a big part of that. They are some of the best chirpers in the THPN family. I can say that with some malice because they won't stop reminding us about Petro. But one thing they also said was they kind of reiterated the general Vegas consensus, and that is that the Sharks are their biggest rivals. There's been kind of a budding rivalry over the first years of their league. Do you consider Vegas to be your biggest rivals, or is there other teams that draw your ire more?
If you were to ask me in their inaugural year, I would say no. But I think that sort of rivalry buds over competition. So
Yeah.
at the essentially the peak of the Sharks' best years between 2016 and 2019 were also they coincided with the Golden Knights' best years because they've been in the league for like a couple years. So I mean, whatever. They had some favorable expansion draft rules, in my opinion. They also had the debacle that was the Florida fiasco go on with them as well.
Yikes.
So yeah, I would have to say that they are our biggest rivals currently. Now it's hard to say that because, as I said before, competition breeds that sort of rivalry, and the Sharks, they've already surpassed their apex. They're done being a great team. They have to turn the page and start the next chapter, and the next chapter is transitioning with the current core of players, whereas I see Vegas in more of a win now position. So while within the last couple of years they have been our biggest rival, the rivalry isn't necessarily going to be shown on the ice like it was last year and like it's going to be this year. It's going to be a very one-sided rivalry that'll end up dying out, much like the Sharks and Kings rivalry did during the 2013, 2014, and then the 2015 season as well. Once the Kings won their hardware and their play sort of went down and they start losing the majority of their players, the Sharks continued on that sort of like trajectory upwards, where the King Sharks rivalry was just kind of brushed off to the side. So it's kind of hard to have a true rivalry right now with anyone, being that we're in this current state. It seems like the Coyotes and the Wild are going to be our rivals because they're our closest in level of competition. But I would have to agree with them hesitantly that they are our biggest rivals. Sorry.
Yeah,
and I do agree with you though about Andrew and Carlo being the best troll chirpers on Twitter, especially because Carlo is so great at Photoshop. So how do I fight that? And I'm going to hire somebody to make me GIFs so that way I can finally chirp back to him and just send him constant pictures of Barclay Goodrow sliding the puck in past Marc-Andre Fleury.
Don't waste your money on hiring anybody. Get an intern.
Oh, yes. There we go.
Interns are great.
What do you think, Wags? I love it.
and I will say, for us, I mean, it's going to be hard to knock off the Blackhawks as our top rival. But but with the Blackhawks being down, you could make the argument maybe, for now the Preds might be, just because they always, like to, chirp us from their trailer parks, in Nashville. You've got Dallas, who, I would say is more of a friendly rivalry. I mean, we don't have like any real beef against them. It's just a very competitive rivalry. And I see that with Colorado as well. But it's kind of hard to have a rivalry when the other team is just kind of down, and it's just like that. It kind of feels like the Blues Blackhawks games lately, Wags, have been just kind of
Yeah, well, but I'll disagree with you slightly on the Colorado thing. I think the Colorado Blues rivalry is going to get more intense and less fan rivalry like Dallas is. I really think, especially with the Kroenke connection and all that, I think the St. Louis Colorado rivalry is going to be the one that, especially after this season, is going to be the one that really jumps to the top of the rankings.
And then you got Vegas because of Petro, and just because it's Vegas and they chirp everyone. So
Well, I think the biggest thing with Vegas is the fact that, so if you look at the St. Louis Blackhawks rivalry, it involves tenure. It's years upon years, decades, dating back to the 70s and the 80s of just constant battles back and forth. That was the Red Wings Sharks when the Red Wings were in the Western Conference. That was literally Jamie Baker's goal to knock off the Detroit Red Wings as the number 1 seed. And then we get hit with the old switcheroo in 2008. So that was the tenure that created that rivalry, the years and years and years. Vegas doesn't have tenure. They don't have that right now. So it's like a sibling rivalry in a sense between the Sharks and the Vegas Golden Knights. It's like the youngest child against the oldest child per se. In that sort of division, because we've been around and we put in our time, but the youngest kid is just getting everything they want no matter what. And they just kick and scream about it, and then they get Petro, and they kick and scream about it, and they get Patches and Stone. And it's like, come on, stop! Like, there's nothing that we can do about it. But the rivalry will get better over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you make a good point there, because like when I was growing up, I hated the Red Wings more than the Hawks, just because you have the history there, but then you also just have the fact that the Red Wings like to abuse us in the playoffs, and that's another topic for another day. But now that the Red Wings are in the Eastern Conference, it's kind of like, whatever, who cares? And they suck anyway. So, and then of course, like in the '70s, the Blues and Flyers, they were in the same division at that point, and they had some bloody matches. I mean, you had like Terry O'Reilly and the Plaguers, and it was just, you had some wars in the '70s. Tell a guy that's younger than us now about that, and they're like, the Flyers? Why? What? They're in the Eastern Conference. Who cares about them?
Is it a wing thing? Because you got the wing on the note and they got the wing on the P. Like, what's going on?
Exactly.
Oh, well, we had a budding rivalry with San Jose too back in the early 2000s. It kind of waned, like you said, when the Blues weren't all that good, and it kind of resurfaced here in the last couple of years. So with the Blues kind of still licking their wounds after Friday night, how do you expect these two games to go with a Sharks team that is kind of on the downside?
I think you're going to see a very physical. Of course, I think Sammy Blaze still serving that suspension for this game, right?
Right, but we've got replacements.
Yeah, exactly. The St. Louis Blues and the Sharks community have been painted as headhunters, essentially. In our fandom, especially in the previous year's playoff run, where you guys absolutely dismantled us. I think it's going to be, you guys are going to be a little surprised. You're going to see a lot faster. That doesn't mean we're going to be in sync, but we're going to be faster with the puck. It's going to be a little bit of a surprise there. And I think you guys are going to be coming off of a bit of a, I'll just say it. You guys are going to be pissed off, right? Yeah. And you're going to take it out on the Sharks. And I don't necessarily believe it to be a close game unless the Sharks can fix a couple of synchronizing problems. Right now, they're, as Shang Peng put it, they're failing fast. If you want to be a fast team, that's fine, but you have to play fast as well. The passes need to be fast and crisp. They can't be behind or two in front, because that's where the sync essentially becomes out of sync. So you're going to see a softer and a faster Sharks team. It's not going to be a very physical Sharks team at all. I wouldn't be surprised if we call up a couple of the bigger guys like Curtis Gabriel and Stefan Nason to kind of hold down that fourth line. We have made a move. We already sent down Joel Shellman. He got put on waivers today, as a matter of fact. So there's a possibility that Frederick Handemark, who's coming over from the Swedish Hockey League, there's a possibility he plays his first gig at fourth line center for us. And he's a bigger, slower guy. So the Sharks are going to try to beef up where they can. But I still think St. Louis is going to dominate us physically, because the Coyotes did it, and you guys are a much more physical team.
Well, we hope you're right after Friday, and we hope that this serves as a bit of a palate cleanser for us. But as you said, the Sharks are very physical. They've been physical for years, and they're not going to make it too easy on the Blues. I don't think and plus the Blues have their own, synchronizing issues of their own. I mean, this will be Hoffman's second game as the Blue, and I think he and Robert Thomas still need some time to gel. It looks like Berube's going back to, what worked before. He kind of really shuffled the lines around to start the season, but now it's like he's going back to what worked before. So we'll see. Who knows? Weirder things have happened. So, Nick, I want to thank you for being a part of our show today, and tell us where we can find you on social media.
You can find myself at NickFloor_ on Twitter, and you can find the Stick Hungry podcast at Stick Hungry Pod.
All right, Nick. Well, thanks a lot for being a part of Bluenotes today, and I wish you luck the next two games, but not too much.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
And we want to thank Nick Floor for that wonderful conversation. And, he may be, the host of a podcast for a bad team, but we've had nothing but good conversations today between him and Griffins.
Oh, not a doubt. I mean, once again, it just goes back. Good people associated with it. They're knowledgeable, and we're a part of that group now. It's pretty awesome.
All right. So, we got Monday nights against San Jose at 7, and then Wednesday night at 8 against San Jose. For the Thursday episode, we won't be able to recap that second game for you because we have jobs and we have lives, and, so, we can't do the overnight thing, unfortunately, but we will have a recap, at least of the first game for you a little bit on Thursday as well. And we'll try to line up another guest from the West Division to give you a preview of what that team has to offer. We've gotten through about half the West Division so far, so we're still getting to learn our new neighbors. And after the Sharks, the Blues take on the Kings. So we might bring on Jordy Cunningham of the Kings Den podcast here on the Hockey Podcast Network to give us a lowdown on why the Kings are so down in the standings in recent years. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bluenotes. I want to thank you for listening and watching, because without you, there is no me, there is no Wags, there is no Guy the Wyatt Blues Fan, there's no Luke Widbin, and there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle.
A reminder that you can follow Bluenotes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bluenotes Pod. I'm the voice of the Blues, Tom Calhoun. Jeremy Boyer, play us out.
You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at the Hockey Podcast Network.